Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Foothill Paint Fabrication. Well, today we're going to be working on a shop-made tool. It's going to be a bullseye pick. Now, I've needed one for years and years. I always wish I had one. I never bought one. I never made one. So today we're going to rectify that. So you can pick them up for about $100 for a small one, kind of the size we're building today, up to $300 or $400 for a larger one. And they're really not that complicated. So I know we can build it ourselves. I think I'm in I don't know, $25 worth of materials here. So I can actually build it faster than they can if I ordered it and had them shipped it to me. So we're gonna go ahead and bust it out, and I'll make some changes to the way I think it should be built. So it's more or less, you know, exactly what I need. So let's jump in close, we'll take a look at it and get to work on putting this thing together. Okay guys, I got it all laid out on a piece of cardboard so there's some contrast so you can see. So really all this is an anvil, and there'll be a foot or a shoe on the other end, and it taps out the dents just like that. So it'll pivot right here, and then the sheet metal will be in between here, and it'll just like that. When you squeeze the handle, it'll come up, the anvil will be right there, and it'll just tap it out. Now, when you're trying to get out a small high spot or a low spot, or you've got a crease that you're trying to just push down the crease, it's really hard to get the dolly on. So let's say this is the dolly and you're holding it up underneath and you're trying to do dolly off. So you're supporting the sheet metal on this side, but let's say it's a crease like that, and then the other side isn't supported while you're tapping, right? So you're really not, you know, the idea is you got that high spot, you want to hold on both sides of it and then just tap right in the middle. Well, that's what this does. So, and most of the commercial ones you'll see, they just have like a U-shaped foot on it, or anvil, right? So what I wanted to do is I wanted to encircle it so when it comes down and taps, it's supported all the way around, you know, the other spot, so on the sheet metal. So it just taps right dead center right there. So really that's all it is. It's not very complicated. And this is the way I think it should be built. I looked at a lot of pictures. There's just a few critical things really, is where you squeeze it right here, make sure it's not too far so your hand can fit on there well. And I believe the pivot point should be exactly the same distance. They should be straight across from each other. That way when it comes in and the anvil comes up to smack the foot, it's square on. It's not hitting it like this or like this. It's hitting it straight on at the same point. That way it doesn't shove the sheet metal one direction or another. So other than that, it's not very complicated. So what I have here is two pieces of 1/2 inch by 36 inch steel rod. I picked it up at Lowe's. It was about $8.50 a stick. So, and then I picked up a piece of 12 inch by 1.5 inch Delron. I think I got on Amazon, so I'm about $10 there. So like I said, I'm less than $30. The rest of the stuff I just had laying around. So I went over to Dave's and he let me use his lathe. And so I made a couple of removable anvils. So this one has about an 1/8 inch little point on it. And this other one has about a 1/4 inch or so. I didn't really mic them out. I just kind of eyeballed it. And what I did was drilled and tapped the end on this one. And then I just threaded in a bolt and then just cut it off. And so these basically just slide on there, and I'm going to put a little set screw on there. So you slide it on, tighten the set screw, and you'll have changeable heads. Now I might make another one that's a little bit fatter too, so I can hit larger areas and not worry about putting a bunch of little tiny dents in it. So ultimately this is all it is. It's not a big deal. I had the spring in the drawer, but I think it's way too short for what I need. But we'll have to worry about that later once we get it tacked together. So I'm going to bring you in close and just show you a few of the parts up close, and then we're going to start putting this thing together. Okay, let's start with the pivot point. All I have is a piece, I think that's 3/16, and these are 1/8, two pieces of 1/8 on there. And what I'm going to do is this piece is going to weld onto this side, and these two pieces will weld onto this part, and that'll give us our pivot point. Now, I think it's pretty critical to make sure this is a nice tight joint, and then these areas are large enough so you don't want these two arms, you know, when it comes down to hit, you don't want them, you know, misaligned up underneath there. You want them to stay pretty tight where you want them. So I've sanded the metal pretty good, and it's pretty smooth, so I can tighten these up on top of each other pretty well, and then put a little oil in there and tighten that down and not have it be all sloppy when we're trying to use it. The other piece, this is to hold the spring, so that's going to go here somewhere. Like I said, that spring's too short, but the whole idea is the spring will go across here and it'll pull the anvil open, and then you just reach your hand right here and you just squeeze it and just tap away. So that's this side of it. I also made a little part right here to hold the other end of the spring. That's going to be welded on the corner right there, and that's really everything that goes on this end. Let's move over down to the other end, and I'll show you the parts I made and what I'm planning to do. Okay, so here's the other end right here, and you guys can see, so before I bent it, Dave drilled and tapped it for 1/4-20. So all it is just a 1/4-20 bolt with a nice smooth shoulder on it, and I just cut the threads down so it wouldn't bottom out. I'll put some Loctite or something on there so this thing doesn't back out easy. And then you just take the anvil I made. So that's just a piece of 5/8, got a quarter inch hole drilled in it. And then I just turned it down to a taper down to the end. Slides on there like that. And then I'm going to drill it and tap it for little set screws so this doesn't bounce out and fall off. So that's that end. And then the other end, we'll get this big fat washer we talked about. So we still have to figure that out. Once we get the other end welded together, then we can figure out where to cut this off, and then this will actually come in and be welded just like that. And so that hits right in the center right there. So that's the plan on that. And here's the dowel run I turned down. And so all I did, there's a 5/8 hole in here, so I turned that down just a little under 5/8. And then that'll just slip in there like that. I plan on drilling that, putting a little R clip or something in there so that doesn't fall out. So when I need to use that. So basically, that's all there is to this whole thing. So let's get this cardboard out of the way and start tacking some stuff up. And then we can start testing it, figure out, if all my measurements come out and if it's going to work. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is weld up the hinge point onto here. So that's this piece right here. I want to keep it all together because I want to make sure this dead center on the rod here. If it's off a little bit, it's not that big a deal. I can tweak it later. But if I just set that on there, this actually falls below the center line right here. So I found a piece of sheet metal, I cut a couple of spacers, and what I want to do is I just want to set them on there like that underneath here. So that'll actually hold this up to the proper spacing. So we'll space that up just a little bit, and if I set that down right back on there, and if I sight this way, I can see that with the straight edge that we are right in the center of the rod here. So that's all we're going to do there. I'm going to get a clamp on there. We're going to clamp that down to hold it snug, and then I'm going to get a couple of tacks. I'm only tacking this together. Never built one before, so if I have to break it apart, I want to make sure it's super easy. So we'll get that tacked on, and then we're going to figure out that other arm right here. We'll get that tacked on, and then just play around with it a little bit and see if it feels right. And then we can cut the other end and get the little foot on there and then tack that on, and then we'll be able to experiment with it a little bit. And then we can move forward with getting the spring mounts on and stuff like that. And this really isn't that complicated. So let me get this clamped and tacked up, and then we'll swing the other arm in here and see if we can't get that on straight as well. Okay, I got it clamped up. So I'm just going to put a little tack here and over here. That should hold it good enough. All right, let's get that other arm in here and get it ready to be tacked up, and then we'll be pretty close to testing it out. Okay, let's test it out, see how she works. Well, it feels pretty good, and they line up. So that's not bad right there. I don't want to do all the welding till we get that other end on, but it feels pretty good right there. Pretty happy about that. And this acts as a natural stop, so when that spring pulls on it, it doesn't try to flip it all the way around. So that's going to be pretty good. I might even add a little piece in there. We're going to probably chop that piece off later, but for now, we're looking pretty good. Okay guys, we got it all put together here. It's working pretty well. I like the way it's all looking. I like the feel of it. But you can tell that this arm is landing way outside where it's supposed to, because if we were to weld that on now, you can tell that that anvil would not land in the center right there. So we need to actually tighten up the bend on here a little bit so that rod will actually land just like that right there, and we can weld it right on that little foot just like that. So that's going to be our next step. I'm going to go back to the bender and I'm just going to tighten this up a little bit, and it's just going to be trial and error. Hopefully, I don't know if I can bend it with it still put together, but I'm just going to keep testing it, and ultimately I would like this foot to land just about right here. That way I can weld that on. So let me go bend that up real quick, and I'll come back and we'll see about chopping this off and getting that tacked on there. Okay, I got it all bent up. As you can tell, here is in the closed position when it's hammering, and these are no longer parallel. So as I had to bend this a lot more than I thought. I could have bent it down here and that would have helped keep these a little more parallel, but I didn't want to screw with that. I don't want too many more bends. I've already got it laying pretty flat, so I don't want to, chance it. So what's going to happen is when it's in the closed position, these will not be parallel like I wanted. Now the only way to fix that would be to lengthen down here to get these up, but then my grip area would be too tall. Then I would have had to rebend this. I don't want to go down that path. So I think it's going to work fine here. I kind of thought them being parallel was important, but really ultimately it looks like as long as this foot is perpendicular to the striking force, that's all that really matters. And really, when you're building this, I put a 90 right here. You could come down here and put a 90 on this one. Really, all that matters is, this is going on. The anvil hits right on the foot, right perpendicular. So that's what we're shooting for here. So this is a 1/4 inch thick. So what I want to do is just put a mark on here. I'll just put the square on here, and then I want to make a line straight across there like that, and then I will just move it up the thickness of this material, and then I'll cut that off, and then we'll tack this in place, and then we can start testing it out. Okay, I got it all clamped up. So all I did was drill a hole in a piece of sheet metal and set it on top of one of the little anvils, so I know I could center. I can actually see the anvil right there, and all I'm going to do is just get this big fat washer centered perfectly on that, and then we're going to tack it right onto that rod. So I just got a couple of magnetic clamps holding it, trying to hold it, perpendicular to the rod down here. So let me get this tacked up, and then we'll mess with it a little bit and see how it feels. Okay, here it is all tacked together. You can tell it's hitting pretty much right in the center. So let's test it out. And I don't know if you guys can see right here. Let's see if we can put a... Yeah, I don't know if you guys can tell, but look, there's a little dent right there. So that's the whole idea behind this thing. So let's say that was it. You could just turn this over just like this, and then you would tap away, with it. So you'd hold that up. I can't do it because I don't have a set screw on here, but you would just tap just like that and take that down. So I think we're pretty much ready to start messing around with the spring. Okay, so I got it. I got the spring arm welded on here. It's just tacked, and then I got the little perch for it on this end tacked on there. So I did find a throttle return spring in my stuff, and I put it on there and it just didn't feel right. So I went ahead and stretched that other one I had. It's only about this long, compressed, but I thought it'd overstretch it and ruin it, but it didn't. So I've got that on there, and it feels really nice. It feels good, nice and solid, firm. And then if you flip it over to use it this way, it feels good as well. So it's really easy to get my hand in here. that's not a problem. I don't have gigantic hands, but you know, I can fit it on there really good. It's comfortable to be able to use it for quite a while. So this is all going to work out really well. I have no problem with any of this. There's one thing I did notice, it was just dumb luck. Some of the ones I've seen that were built, they open up too big, you know, they just, because the spring will just keep pulling and they'll keep pulling this around. So some guys have little locks on here and some other stuff. But this arm right here, I don't know if you guys can see that, right there, this hits up on there, right there. So that acts as a natural stop on there, so it doesn't open too far, which is pretty good. So you get, you know, I don't know what we're going to get, you know, 3 or 4 inches across the front here to get it, you know, around the fender lip or the hood or whatever you're doing, and then, you know, start picking away at your dents. So, so it's really looking good. I'm liking the way everything's fitting. I don't think I'm going to change anything on the, you know, as far as the shape or bends or anything. So the only thing left to do is get these drilled and get some set screws put in them. I don't think I have any. So I did all of this with only purchasing the 1/2-inch rod and, oh, and the Delrin. That's it. So all I had to do was buy that. So 30 bucks, not bad. You know, I mean, they're 100 bucks to buy, and I think my design is going to be a little bit better than what I could buy. So last thing to do is do some final welds on all these. They're just tacked, get it all cleaned up, and then let's test this thing out. Okay, guys, all done with the welding and cleanup. Ran a 80 grit flapper wheel over everything just to make sure there's no sharp edges, and wire wheeled it, knocked the dingleberries off, ran some sandpaper over it. So it's pretty much ready to go. I've taped on one of the little anvils right there. So let's go ahead and test this thing out, see how it works before we paint it. Okay guys, I don't know how well you can see it, but there's a little bump right there. Let's see if we can get that out. Just like that. And it doesn't take much force squeezing. You don't really have to go crazy with this thing. So, because it's just a point, you know, you're just tapping a little point, but you can find the high spot, and you put some layout ink on here and run a file over the top of it. All the high spots will show up, and then you just simply set this on the high spot. Right there, you just hold it in place, and you tap that out just like that. I mean, that's working really good. I'm kind of excited to use this on that hood. All right, okay guys, all done. It's looking really good. I got the set screws in, the anvils, so those are ready to go. I painted it with some hammer tone silver, so it's not going to rust. It's looking really good. And just tested it out again. It works really great. Let me back the camera away. I wrote some dimensions down just in case you guys want to build one and give you maybe just a starting point. I think it's not that critical, but this is what worked for me. So let me get that for you, and then we'll wrap this one up. Okay, I don't know how well you guys can see it, but from the bottom here up to the bottom of the anvil is 5 inches. From here to here is 19 inches. From the bottom up to where the handle turns right here is 10 inches. And then over to here is 4 1/4. Basically, I used every inch of that 36 inches. So I just started bending here, went around, and whatever was left is what I had. So 5, 19, 10, and 4 1/4. And then on the upper part where the foot is, it's 6 3/4 up here. Then it's 15 inches across here, and then 9 1/2 down. And that'll get you, you know, and that's basically a starting point. I don't know how long that is. That's probably 2 1/2 inches. It's not that critical. But this is what worked for me. And if you guys want to make one, it'll come in really handy when you're trying to knock down those little tiny high spots. Okay guys, that just about wraps up this video on making the bullseye pick. It's working out really well. It's nice and firm. The arms don't wander back and forth. And when you squeeze it, it hits dead center every time. So really happy with the way it turned out. Less than $30, so not a bad deal. A little bit of work in the shop, and I made it more to what I really want instead of buying something from somebody else and then modifying to what I want. So it came out really great. I'm really happy with it. So thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already, and mash that bell icon so you get notifications every time I release a new video. We'll see you on the next one.